Good evening, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Okay, let's just see. Am I live? Am I live? I think that's working. Hello. Yes, I am live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me to the very first live event with Publicate 2020. I'm really excited for the event this evening. It's with a fantastic poet called Ian Macartney, who's just logged into the web. So I'm going to let him in and let him say hello. Let's see if this works. I have absolutely no idea if any of this will work. Let's see, go live. Where is Ian? So I should also say, before while Ian's loading up, just a massive thank you to Rosemary Hudson from Hope Road Publishing and Alex Ives and Joe Summers from First Terrace Records. They were absolutely delights to work with, and I was really proud of the events that they contributed to. And thank you to everyone who's supported those videos and watched and engaged with it. It's been really nice. I'm sure as this process goes on, there's going to be dozens and dozens of thank yous I'm going to have to make, and you'll hear it a lot. But I can never say thank you enough. So here we go. So Ian is still connecting, but we'll be fine. We'll get through this. Bear with me a moment. So currently claims that Ian McCartney is unable to join. So let's see if we can address that. Bear with me a moment. No, now it's asking me to put filters on what I'm doing. I'm going to try and add Ian myself. So this might be incredibly painful for some of you to watch, but such is live.
I'm there. Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
That's all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. Not too bad. Sorry, it froze on my end, but I think it's working now, so that's okay.
You're coming through fine over here.
Okay, that's good. Yes, I can hear you fine. Yeah, likewise.
Perfect. So, welcome to Publicate. It's really nice to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, to start with, for anyone who isn't familiar with you, could you just, how would you best describe your practice?
I just start with writer. I think writer's the main one that I go for. I think everything else that kind of goes to the side is more, I don't know, sort of to practice being a beginner. I get, well, that sounds quite, I don't know, motivational coach, doesn't it? But like, you know, for me, I feel one of my ambitions is to be able to do a mini thing of each possible genre. I don't know. So like I try, but I mean, writer's the main one. I'm a writer. That's the simple answer, really. But yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Publish a mixture of kind of poetry and film poems, and you work on scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make a distinction in your website that you don't like the limitations of the term poet?
Yeah, I mean, it's that I think is less profound as it is that it is sort of maybe pigeonholes the wrong answer. I think there's a set of assumptions and expectations that comes with the term poet. Like you know, like very dodgy stereotypes of kind of, I don't know, a pompous person. So maybe that's something I just have to grow out of. Because I mean, Seamus Heaney talks about, you know, you should have the pride of a poet. And I don't know. Maybe that comes from like some kind of like, I don't know, high school anxiety or something. But you know, but yeah. Or I suppose the other thing as well, like poet and poetry is such a lateral value. In the sense that, you know, fiction would have a more immediate readership, while poetry is always kind of a niche, and maybe there's a part of me which doesn't, that almost more would rather anticipate, like, wants the widest readership as well. But I mean, that's quite a, I don't know if that's the most logical way of thinking about it, or not logical, but you know, yeah.
Yeah, And so another thing I want to touch on is you, again, on your website, which is something I recommend everyone visit. It's kind of a work of art.
Oh, thank you.
But you kind of represent yourself this kind of multiplicity of artists. You've got like pseudonyms that have pseudonyms and characters.
Yeah.
And I wondered, is that a choice that informs the work you make, or is that a result of the work you make?
I'm not sure. I mean, because I used to play those kind of like endless playfulness and endless games and playfulness as a child. Like when I was younger, I used to like just do like so many doodles, and it was like Illustrator was like the ambition. And then when I was around 12 is when I decided to change tack. So I mean, like the whole idea of the pseudonyms was, so the framing of the website is that it's a collective, quote unquote, but it's just a collective of all my different names. So it's just one person, because I think that's really funny, and I think it's and just kind of, I don't know, being light humor or like lightly mocking in a light way with that sort of the conversations and vocabulary you have around collaborative art and like groups and like magazines as well. Like I think for the end game for all the different characters is to, and this sort of relates as well to, you know, small presses, to be able to have some kind of micro press which can publish like what seems to be a magazine, but really is just like a kind of a capsule of my work. And then to have, you know, because again, I don't know, it's just the absurdity of that. It's quite fun. But I mean, the whole sort of like the idea of there being a half narrative threading all that together. I mean, like that's more a recent rediscovery that was more prominent in like my like doodles as a child, right? And it's been quite rewarding to be able to find a way to do that more intellectually with actual proper work, not just juvenilia. I mean, and also, I mean, like David Mitchell, Cloud Atlas, and so on, you know, he takes that to another level, and he was a big inspiration for me when I was like 15. Yeah, and he does another level where he talks about all his works being connected in the same shared universe, or multiverse, as it were. So that is probably a subconscious influence of it as well. Yeah.
Have you ever managed to identify what kind of unifying characteristics are across all?
Oh god. I mean, I say playfulness. I suppose playfulness would be a factor of that. Playfulness. I mean, well, okay. What are the trends that come up a lot? Absinthe, which is a weird, inconvenient thing that comes up a bunch. Speculative, I suppose. You know, speculative. Like, it's funny. I don't read as much speculative genre stuff as I should do, but I always fall back into that kind of mode of telling. Just because I think it's more interesting, to be honest. And you know, Kirsty Logan has that term of slipstream fiction, you know, which is I heard her say that at a talk at the Edinburgh Book Festival, actually. You know, because her books are always on that kind of boundary between fantasy, but it's never quite that. And I mean, again, that goes back to, you know, if I was talking about foundational authors, I mean, Alistair Gray taught me that the literary could be fantastical, and China Miéville, the great fantasy writer, probably the most cerebral speculative fiction writer we have, taught me that the speculative could be literary. And that's kind of how those two work in tandem for me. So yeah, that kind of comes up a lot. Playfulness, I don't know. I suppose it's one of those things where it is, because I'm so close to the work, I can't quite give the most accurate answer for it. But I suppose that's a start. For, you know,
for the biography that will come out in 50 years' time. Some other,
yeah, sure.
The introduction to collective works.
Yeah.
So again, something I want to kind of raise about the work. I'm kind of a bit loath to use this word because it's a bit of a wanky arts word, but I feel it occupies this quite a liminal space, like both in terms of the text itself and the forms by which you publish it. How much of that is kind of by design?
I've always liked in-betweenness, I suppose. In-betweenness comes up a bunch. But like be it traveling But, you know, like, I don't know, trains and planes and, you know, and then the speculative versions of it, like spaceships or whatever, always seem to crop up in my work. I don't know, ambivalent, because I guess I like ambivalence. I like ambivalence. I don't quite like things to be quite as concrete or polarizing. So maybe the liminality comes from that. Also, I mean, like, a lot of the stuff I do is digital, and digital is almost by design and default ephemeral. So I suppose that's more a case of the medium and what I'm working as, making it kind of almost temporary. Yeah, I suppose also, I mean, I don't know. I'm working or writing, creating slash etc. In a culture which has disposable elements as well, I guess. Or I mean, the myth of static great works is kind of, if not unraveled, at least kind of put to the side for a moment, you know. So maybe there's an element of that as well. Yeah.
And the kind of digital work you do you what's the process? Do you like create something and then transfer it into the digital space, or do you work with the kind of platforms that you're using?
I think it's a mixture. So I mean, for several years I would upload a lot of work to digital online writing communities, you know, just like writing tons and tons and just like spitting all out there. And that was more a case of like, here's a community platform, I'm going to bring that work there, rather than writing. Although there were some exceptions, sometimes I would write things specifically for online, but then there's other things like I did some webcomic work before, which has always been that's been very much digital, especially initially I was inspired by a work called Homestuck by Andrew Hussey, which is one of those like internety works that has a very, you know, bad fandom, and it's never put in like an intellectual context because of that. It's always kind of meme kind of, you know, but very ambitious work, very long kind of work, and that's probably the first great text I would say that is just like purely intermediate, because there are elements of everything from video games to concept album to dialogue and chat logs and stuff like that. But so I took direct inspiration for that for a work called Trapped into Nothing, which was about a line in a void, because again, absence. And basically, then I would have community members would give me commands, as it were, and then from that I would then build a narrative around that. So that was very much using digital tools, and I'm currently going through a trilogy of very specifically digital works. I just recently finished one called Trade Product Engine, which was a novella I serialized through my Facebook account, which I decided to wipe. So the only thing I were posting were these like chapters of a weird, bizarre novella about like loosely based on the Kabbalah. And then the next one that I've been currently working on is another webcomic, which I haven't done that for a while, called Achroma, and that's going to be a webcomic in verse, and that'll be on Instagram. So yeah, and then after that, I want to do one on Twitter as well, and then that'll be like the trifecta. So yeah.
With the Facebook project, like, given that you wiped your Facebook, do you still have people kind of interact with you?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely still use the Facebook account as it is. It was just like more the content for it. I don't know. It's funny because for somebody who like my age, which is, you know, meant to be, you know, stereotypically obsessed with like social media and stuff, and because I do so much work digitally, I feel I have more of a fraught relationship with it than you might expect looking at my work. Like, in one day it would be nice if I could get to a point where I could feel comfortable with like deleting my accounts. Yeah. In a weird way, which is usually reserved for your, like, I don't know, your neo-pastoral, you know, old middle-aged men, and you go live, you know. But it's almost because and I found this with uploading on Facebook, because in some ways Trade Product Engine was very much a failed experiment, because I really, really overestimated the attention spans of people on Facebook, but also because like those platforms are just not designed to be creative with. They're very rigid, it's kind of like trying to do art in like a corporate courtyard, you know, of a corporate building.
Yeah.
You're just trying to do art, and you're trying to camp out here in this courtyard in the between like a business building, you know. And then versus, you know, the positive aspects of the web, you know, like, and like the idea the website was so fun to work on because it was very much that blank slate where I could actually do what I want, as it were. Well, that's quite a simple way to put it, but yeah.
And the kind of digital work, is that transferable to your performance work into your live work?
It could be. I haven't quite broached that territory. I mean, we'll probably talk more about this. My group up in Aberdeen, Re-Analogue, the finale we did, because of the lockdown, we had to do it digitally as a live stream. So that was kind of those thing. And my work with BBC The Social has also been transmitted and communicated digitally as well. But I mean, yeah, I mean, again, going back to Trade Product Engine, that is now as a manuscript form. And yeah, that's in manuscript form and is trying to be sent off to small presses and publishers and stuff as a text B. So a version that is more streamlined and isn't rooted to that digital stuff. So yeah, it depends, I guess.
And I would just recommend it's the sunniest Sunday it's ever been at the moment. That's why my face is like but so Ian, you very kindly agreed to do a reading for us.
Yeah, sure.
What you like to read?
So I'm going to read, it's very short, it's like 350 words, just the opening to the novel I'm working on at the moment, which is set in Aberdeen, where I was for 4 years. And I'm trying to think what else to say. I've read a few chapters here and there before, like once on student radio, and the other, I did a much longer chapter for that Re-Analogue finale that I mentioned. But yeah, this is the first page, so I can go into that if you want me to.
I'd love you to.
Yeah, grand. Okay. The novel is called AMIO so far, and it's like an acronym, AMIO. The beast was smashing the water with the charred half of a drum mallet. Tom heard the noise come clear through his cottage window first. He was leafing through some third-wave weird short stories in an attempt to distract himself from one dystopia, real, with another, not real, yet. His phone thrummed in the bottommost cabinet. One could only keep up with the disaster for so long. All the tragedies he had seen spiral off his Twitter feed were negligible. There wasn't a process for digesting this, so it was more, not the eventual ebb as 2 or 3 days waned. It felt like longer. It could trend forever. The disaster could be the death knell of response, its tangled progress. Well, Tom thought, we live in hope. He looked out to the harbour. A topless boy, barely 18, Tom guessed, fighting the North Sea like it was an instrument. His skin was very pale. There was a black strap knotted over his dirty blonde hair, but his back was faced to the cottage, so Tom had no idea what the strap held over his face. The torso was familiar. Tom threw on clothes and went downstairs. It was raining, sunless and bitter early morning, and his slippers squelched on the slimy bricks. The boy was at the bottom of the steps, the tide lapping like a black tongue. Tom remained on the quay. "Hello?" he shouted out. "Are you all right?" The boy spun round. Over the upper half of his face was a ceramic red mask. The second half must have been smashed, because as it reached his nose it became jagged. Tom could see his quivering lips, some adolescent fluff, the barely there jawline. But the upper half of his face was occluded. It was fringed with winged protrusions, part masquerade, part tengu. The boy swallowed. Tom went quieter. "You were in the purple flames?" The beast's eyes went wide. In, I am the purple flame." And before Tom could voice a response, the beast sprinted on all fours into the waves, yelping through the water until submerged, lost in darkness and distance. And Tom said nothing, but watched. So that's the first page.
Ian, that's really lovely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, still work in progress. Still a lot of work to do, but yes, exciting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereabouts? So, how far into writing it are you?
So I have about, according to my document, it says 12K, but it's very hard to gauge how long it'll be. I have a general plot outline, but I mean, like, because it kind of, I'm reluctant to say too many details in case things change. But right now, it's basically these cycles of these multiple different plot lines that go out through the city, kind of very, hysterical realism. Zadie Smith, Bolaño is a big influence for this as well. And going through these cycles, these different various stories, and I've managed to map out 6 or so of those cycles, maybe. So I know where I'm going. It's just getting there. But yeah. So
Just the difficult part of writing.
yeah, that wee thing, the wee inconvenience. Yeah.
Is this the first novel?
So I wrote one in my first year of uni, which has been kind of that's an interesting one. That was called A to B. That was very wearing Alistair Gray and David Mitchell on my sleeves, and then in retrospect, Ian Banks, because Ian Banks did do a novel inspired by Leonard, and the end of the bridge, and it was. When I read that in my fourth year class, I was like, "Oh no, it's already been done." But yeah, and that was kind of a weird campus novel of a sort, and it's hard to know what to do with that now because I went through the usual system of sending it through to agents and stuff, and positive rejections. And I don't say that to be like bitter. I mean, like genuinely, it was like rejections. I feel it's just this base neutral level, and that's kind of, if there's any advice I have, you just have to treat it like a base neutral, and then but so I don't know whether the achievement of that novel is that I managed to write a novel and now I can actually go on to write something publishable, or if a professional editor managed to get their hands on that, they could see what's hollow in it and maybe tell me how to fix it, but it's hard to tell. But so yeah, this is number 2 though, technically.
Well, I'm sure we all wish you the best in it.
Thank you. Yes.
Really like the debate. Sounds pretty cool.
Cheers.
Just to move on, you mentioned before Re-Analogue.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to? That was a project when you were at Aberdeen University. Right?
Yes. That was kind of my undergrad project of sorts. So that was an arts collective that is set up with some fellow students at the university. We operated for about 2 years. First event was February 2018, and we ended May 2020. And basically, the ethos was just to do interesting stuff in Aberdeen. And I think that was kind of part of a general sentiment in Wave, because there were a lot of different people I saw and witnessed starting up some really great, crucial, necessary things to actually create some kind of culture in Aberdeen, or the culture we would like to see, as it were. I'm not naive enough to think that I just kind of, brought it like some Anthony H. Wilson of, Aberdeen or whatever. But yeah, and that was, I started with Matt Gibb, who's I think online. Matt Gibb and Sam, who's a musician. Sam Anga, playwright. Alex Skipper's the playwright and was also head of student newspaper. Then Sam is a musician and writer as well. And then we added more people: Anita Markov, filmmaker; Jared Cameron, graphic designer. I'm going to forget some names. Oh no, Tom Bynum Shaw, also writer. Morven Kemp and Miriam Schluter. Morven's a great musician. Miriam is a poet. I think that's them all. Yes. Okay. So a group of 7 eventually. And yeah, and we just put on a bunch of events, mainly spoken word nights. But Sam and Matt also put on a music festival. Anita and Jared put on a film festival. We launched a magazine. Actually, I don't have to wait. I'll just go get the show magazine. We still have some copies left. Where is it? This is our magazine. Managed to print. Yeah. This was actually this printed during Edinburgh Book Festival 2019, while we were working away at it, and managed to get that done then. But yes, so yeah. Anyway, did a lot of stuff for 2 years, and then decided to because we were all graduating. It felt good to have that closed loop, and it was always going to have that kind of 2-year period. But I'm proud of what everyone did in it. Yeah.
So another project that I'm going to butcher the title I'd like to talk about. Appears on the page ampersand with a question mark.
Oh yes, and
I'm guessing, yeah. What can you tell us about that project? That's
so that's an interesting one. That's kind of a side thing, I guess. Basically, I was trawling through and I realized I made a blog years and years ago called that name, and you need the inflection. And that was basically meant to be my poetry blog, and then I just left it for like 6 years. But I thought it was a cool name, so I decided to make that into just a short e-zine for sort of visual poetry and visual literature, which I haven't done much of, but I've always appreciated it. I've always liked it. And that's basically continuous, no like submission deadlines. It's just you submit your work up to 5 pages in a PDF, and then I decide whether to put it on the blog. Yes, and that's the side project because I am working on then a more quote unquote proper magazine, which will hopefully be physical, with aforementioned Tom Bowshaw, which is called World's Dream. And we've got some really exciting writers lined up for that, but there'll be more details of that eventually in the world. But yes, and is sort of for the visual stuff. Yeah. And
I find the visual stuff quite interesting. Like, so you mentioned in the area of your website about a writer called Ryan.
Yeah.
Can you explain what his influence is on that kind of poetry?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about him. I think I found him from a Vsauce video ages ago, but he was, he's like very ultra minimalist literature, so he's credited as writing the shortest poem ever, which is the letter M with an extra bump. So it's these very conceptual sort of kind of works, which I like, and I mean, I suppose going back to like, playfulness, I think I probably appreciated that aspect of it and kind of latched onto that as an aspect, and just also blurring that line between. I think another thing I like is sometimes just what I would call like abstract fantasy, right? Where you just the power of literature sometimes is that it kind of transcends the image. You can write a line which is impossible to be visual, but it will now exist because it's literature. I think that's the radical power of it, especially in a visually saturated culture, like the digital provides, as it were. And I think that kind of visual minimalist poetry kind of plays with that in interesting ways. Yeah.
And it kind of, for me, it really blurs that line between what we would consider writing and what we would consider visual art. Is that in you've written down kind of these visual concrete as well, like, do you think there is a distinction somewhere in there still between a written poem and a piece of visual art?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, no, well, not necessarily. Oh, I don't know. That's not really a good answer, though, is it? I don't know. Good night, everyone. No, I mean,
we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, it's just sometimes the visual world is just so overwhelming for me. It's nice to just go back to like the basic units of visuality, which is sometimes just virtually a square, a cube, a circle. There's something very pleasing about that to me. And I don't know if that's weird or not. Probably is, but so maybe there's an element of that in that you're almost getting the baggage away and you're kind of honing down to just like what the pure essence of a symbol, I guess. But yeah, those kind of experiments, they don't happen super often, because like even like my visual art is never particularly detailed, and I don't think if I tried to like sketch like what was in front of me, like I would not do a good job. Which is why I kind of always relegate or retreat to the abstract, as it were. I mean, that's also the name of my memoir, funnily enough, Retreat to the Abstract.
To the abstract.
Yeah, but that's novel 3. But yeah, yes.
So something you mentioned earlier was the work you did for BBC, not BBC Sounds,
BBC The Social?
that's the one.
Yeah.
And there are these 2 really beautiful visual poems that have been published. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, sure. So those are both collaborations with Matt Gibb again. He did the filming and the directing, and they're kind of probably they're like 2 spoken word pieces. The second one was sort of a quote unquote commission of a sort. I was asked to write about graduating during lockdown, which I did. And so that piece was based on the other one I wrote on the inauguration day of a certain president back in 2017. And as a sort of almost a queer proclamation, again, not proclamation, what am I, a prophet? Like, you know, but like a queer, like, like a, yeah, just like kind of being like, trying to look for those like positive romantic moments, as it were. And that, but then our producer really liked that one, so decided to run with it. And those are always fun, because like for all my, it's funny, like the term experimental, because it's definitely true for me. I do like to experiment and be weird, but I do also have an element where it's like a goal would be to marry that in a way that's accessible. I hold the pop culture / like, you know, being able to be accessible in that regard with a lot of respect. Actually, I think there's a lot to be taken seriously in pop, as it were. So I think that was the kind of example to be able to do spoken word pieces, which I was happy with, while also being like accessible. Like that sort of side of work is always, I've always really appreciated that, and always really liked that. It's almost relieving in some ways. It's like, okay, this can reach people of a sort. It's not too. I'm always worried I'm going to get too highfalutin, or like I don't know, like Borges is great and wonderful, but I mean, like he is dense, and I'm not sure that's, if I'm going to be dense, it's not necessarily. I want to be entertaining and dense, you know, which is the name of my second memoir. You know, yeah. So that's why the BBC Social, I was really happy and keen to do that kind of work.
And did your relationship with those poems change?
Yeah, I mean, the it's always super exciting with scripts, which I suppose those poems kind of became and becoming film poems. The great thing with scripts is actually seeing that language get changed and be made better by other people. Like with the screenplay work I've done, that's always been so rewarding, because it never ends up like you imagine it, but the way it ends up is just so much better in the right hands. I've been very fortunate to have it's always been in the right hands. And sort of with the film poems, I suppose it's kind of similar. And definitely for, you know, the few stage work that I've had done before, like seeing the actors and just like be able to raise that material is like super uplifting / I don't know, adjective here, you know, but and so the film poems, I guess, were to some extent kind of similar to that. I suppose that because the Heart's Constant isn't necessarily so rooted to that political context in that sense. Now that it's become a film poem, it's more about, I suppose, the more quote unquote universal aspect of it is more what's apparent maybe in a film poem. Because for a while, me and Matt were like, should we add in just the date, January 20th, 2017? And then we were like, no, that just doesn't work. So I suppose that's one example of it kind of shifting. But then for 4 years, which is the piece of a graduating during lockdown, because that was brand new, that was very much written for a performance. I was thinking a lot about sounds and internal rhythm and those kind of things. Yeah.
Cool. And so that just I know I'm trawling through your past projects here. Something
No,
I'm
that's
curious.
great.
You wrote a screenplay which was designed to be unfilmable.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
can you explain that?
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I remember I met up with when it comes to filmmaking, the person I collaborate a lot with, a guy called Ewan McIntosh. I remember meeting up with him. I was like, "Oh, I've worked on this new script," and I showed it to him. It's like, "Oh, great, it's unfilmable. Thanks, Ewan." But it's called. Actually, it was published in this is a magazine in Ireland. Christopher Kessel and Evie Donovan, shout out to them, which is all about being intermedial to like blurring line stuff, and they published an excerpt from it. It's called The Ozymandias Rex, and that's kind of that's the front page with diagrams, accessible writer for people, as I say. And that basically was like the interesting thing about trying to do a screenplay as impossible film is that it is a futile endeavor. I think when something is futile, I think what you have to jump back and cross out that word and then write freedom kind of at the top of it. Like it was very freeing to see like how would I try to do this impossible task of making, because a screenplay is inherently begging to be translated in a sort, is inherently connected to a kind of institutional pipeline. Well, pipeline sounds quite harsh, but like it's meant to be a text that then becomes something visual. So if you're trying to just make it purely text, I think that could be quite radical and exciting and interesting. And basically, in trying to pursue that, it went in some wild directions. There's scenes with gangsters, and you have people in an art gallery. It's like a collage of these different scenes. There's a prose poem by the devil in there. I don't know. Maybe it'd be cool to have that full thing reworked and republished. I think for me, it'll be finished when it is 2-volume work of and it adds up to 5 hours if tried to be filmed. I think that'll be it when it's done. But yeah, no, that was a fun one, and fun to think about the screenplay and to be able to treat the screenplay as a poetic document. I'm very passionate about that and being able to find that, but while also balancing it with the freedom of knowing that it has to reach an audience as well. Yeah, that's kind of how screenplays are like the public arena at their best. The public arena of that kind of discussion you can have. While poetry, as I say, there's kind of a lateral value where it's a bit more introspective, and you do find your audience, but it's the value of it courses through like a river. Maybe. Yes.
Brilliant. So we're going to have to wrap up very soon. So just to finish off, you mentioned world. Is that your kind of main project at the moment?
Oh god! So in terms of yes, so World Dream in terms of like productions, as it were, that's the magazine I want to do. Preferably, we'll start getting proper work on that come after lockdown, whenever that is. I mean, yeah, I've already mentioned webcomic and verse and Amio are kind of those two more immediate texts. There's also some short stories I'm trying to get things into like pamphlet orders. I'm trying to keep busy during lockdown. And just very quickly, I'll say World Dream is kind of connected to the spiritual successor to Re-Analogue of a sort called Of Ghosts, which is kind of the brand/name for any kind of productions I do. Productions being everything from performative work to physical work like zines and stuff to micropress to digital stuff as well will kind of come under that banner. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to work on at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ian, thank you for doing it for me. It's really, really nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
Who's watching has enjoyed it as well.
Thank you. No, I'm glad to be asked. It's very honoured. I feel like a big boy writer. It's great. Yeah.
A grown up.
Yes, I've done it.
Well, all writers pass through Publicate before
Of course, yeah, the gateway.
Ian, thank you so much, and everyone at home, thank you for this. There will be links to Ian's website and the Publicate bio, and like I said, work of art, so please go and visit it. So I'll try and sign off now.
Yep.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
No problem. Cheers. Thank you.